All right, welcome to another edition of the Healthy Brands sponsored The Growth Engine with Ryan and Trice. Ryan, what's up, buddy?
Hey, Trice, how's it going?
Good, good. Crazy week. Lots of great marketing discussions, and today I think we're going to have another one. So, why don't you tell everybody a little bit about what we're going to talk about?
It's been a week of marketing plans and strategy with clients, and so a lot of these clients we get through like basic marketing foundation type of things that we've discussed in prior episodes, and then they call me in to take a look at their current agency plan or their current marketing strategy, and it's pretty simple. They have down social media, SEO, and paid search. That's their marketing strategy, and they're spending thousands of dollars on this each month, and they think they've got that marketing strategy checkbox like covered, right?
Right.
And I'm like, well, wait a minute. You could post for the end until the end of time. How do you know paid search is actually getting you any results? And SEO is a long game, right? Like you don't get instant results always, and it doesn't flood leads in right out of the gates. So,
Yeah.
uh, you know, I don't see that as marketing strategy other than they're going through the motions of what they think they have to do, right?
Yeah. 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 I think it's interesting, right? Like people come into a conversation about what their marketing strategy should be, and it's all hot button. It's oh well, we know in our industry, paid search is really important. Everybody does it. Well, there's a lot of things that go into that, right? Like, well, is it right for you? And that's usually the question. Is you might be right, but it may also not be right, and there might could be a million other things you could do first
Yeah.
before you invest in paid search. So I think the way we look at this a lot of times, and we're not always on the same page about this, but the thing we always are on the same page about is just because everybody else is doing it doesn't mean it's right for you,
Yeah.
and it has to scale to you meet the business's needs and goals and bandwidth and budget and all those good things. So let's talk a little bit about that today. I know you've got some experience with this as a CEO. This is and serving a lot of clients. And why is this important to CEOs to kind of start from this perspective of like looking at the big picture?
Yeah, I think it's important because we need to open their eyes to what marketing really covers. Like, what is the role of marketing, and what areas does it cover in your company?
Right.
So we need to establish what are the possibilities. And and after this last week, I came back and I started making a list of what is that total universe of options look like for marketing in a company today, right?
Right.
And you have to start putting them in certain like buckets of types of things you can do. And it just seems like I started and I had 10 things listed, and it grew to 15 and then to 20 and then 30. Like, I've got so many. And it's
Yeah.
no wonder marketers today are struggling to get everything done when they're working internally in a company. And also if they're working in an agency, why a lot of times it's hard to satisfy a client. There's so many things you have to do if you really want to do all of what you can in marketing today.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I started putting this list together. I'm going to rattle off some of this stuff because I'm going to try to touch on the things that maybe you didn't think about, or that isn't like the normal stuff.
Yep.
Everybody knows marketing does social media, SEO, and paid search. Okay. Uh, so what I often find missing is the content, really rich content in these plans if you're going to use those things. So things like who's going to come up with the video ideas? What videos do you need to do? Who's going to put that into YouTube, create a channel, who's going to optimize all that, and who really understands and knows that piece, right? Video and YouTube is huge. I'm a huge fan of it. It's my number one thing for 2022 would be as much video that's relevant, that answers the questions that your clients have, right? It's a huge marketing tactic that I think most companies should be using right now.
Yep.
Um,
I
and
can't advocate for it more.
yeah,
Like even when we talk about it, I'm like, oh my God, if video, just video. I won't rabbit hole like normal, but video.
There's a reason why we do video with our podcast, right?
It's,
Right.
it's such totally different ball game.
Yeah. And so I put podcast. Did you know podcasting works? I mean, imagine that.
Right. What's
Yeah.
shocking to me, I mean, I again don't want to digress too much, but even in B2B, people don't believe. They don't understand, like, hey, look, you're a subject matter expert, man. Talk about content, talk about yourself, talk about the industry, talk about the things that go on. Like anybody in your industry is going to geek out about what's going on in their industry. That's the point.
Yeah. Yeah.
Video podcast. Enough said.
100%. Like, and I tell these business owners, like, you are brilliant. Like, and not brown nosing. These guys are really brilliant. They have all this stuff in their head. And I'm like, please get it out. How do you get it out? Right. And so say it once, right? Say it once really well, put it on video and put it out there to the public and to your employees. I love it. So,
Yeah.
blog writing, who's going to manage your directories, Google, marketing definitely is in charge of your website. Your website may or may not have e-commerce. E-commerce now includes things like Amazon, like who's managing those if you have products you're selling.
No doubt.
When doing strategy, I'm finding that like this is the opportunity to look through all of these things and look for like maybe some secret weapons, some gold nuggets here you can go after that maybe your competition isn't thinking of, right? So hey, maybe we should be getting leads through selling stuff on Amazon for our service. Like, and that can be a strategy as well. So I love having all these things written out because now from a strategic standpoint, I can start to cross off things that I don't think will work, or I can prioritize them and put them in a hierarchy of things that will work the most, like the best ideas to the worst, right? Because everybody's limited on budget and time, right?
Yeah. So for me, the same thing. Like I have a certain methodology or approach that I like to take. It feels more natural to me. It's not, like we've talked about this before. It'd be different from person to person. Every marketer is different. They have different experiences. Every company is different. Every customer base is different. So your strategy is always going to be different. But for me, I like to look at things a certain way and make decisions the same. I go through that same process. And time, money, and value are the same things I evaluate for all of it. And so I too like to prioritize things. So you have this giant landscape of stuff of like trade shows and email and direct mail and paid media and paid search and SEO and content and there's a million things in marketing. And I like to look at those and say, okay, what is tactically the most important for me? What's the most efficient for me? What can I afford to do? What I have the bandwidth to do? What I have the expertise to do? All of those things are factors. And that's what makes your list different than everybody else's list. What's the industry do? What works for the industry? All that kind of stuff. So yeah, I'm the same way. That's how I prioritize for myself.
What's hard for the marketer, I think, in could be the CMO in charge, or could be just a marketing coordinator. I mean, it could be any of these marketing roles in a company. What's hard is the CEO can walk in the door at any point and say, how come we aren't posting as much, or I don't like what we're posting, and put all this emphasis on posts. And at the end of the day, do you want posts or do you want leads and customers? Because they may not be tied together. A lot of times they're not.
100%.
You think we should post because your competitor's posting more than you, or you like their post better. Yeah. At the end of the day, I don't care, to be honest. I mean, I care about the look and the brand and the image of the company. I do care about that. But if my goal is customers and revenue, I care about that. And that's what I'm measuring. And so doing a post every day or 5 posts a day may not be part of the strategy I need to reach that goal. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. I look at this the same way in that I'm like, what's the goal? I'm so we talked about this earlier, right? It's kind of getting ready for this show. The goal for a company that's $100 million, their bandwidth and their budget are totally different than a startup. Your goal as a startup, you might say, I'm all about revenue. The truth of the matter is, you don't have anyone close to buying. Your buying cycle is, doesn't exist. You haven't defined it. It doesn't, there's nothing in it yet, right? And so you're like, no, 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 no. You need awareness, man. You got to figure out who you are. You got to do all the things we talked about before. And then you got to start applying that in some way so that people pay attention to who you are in your category. Then you can talk about, how do I get transaction out of that? And unless you have money to put into it to drive that process and speed it up with something that's like maybe a promotional or paid media type of thing to get sort of jump ahead, unless you have money to do that, you're in a different place. When you're $100 million company, you probably have money to do that kind of thing. And you can look at different layers and you can say, content marketing and demand generation and social media and organic, all of that's important to me. And also paid media and promotion is important to me. I can do both, as well as messaging for internal messaging with employees or programs or sales enablement and those executables and design and things like that, right? Those are all different, and just many of the buckets in which you're a marketer you touch. But again, it all boils down to, situations can be different for every person, every company, every customer base. Even if I came into 5 different companies, and I have a predisposition for how I want to go about doing it, it's still going to look different at every one of those places. And what I say is going to be different for sure, because their messaging is different. So
Yeah.
So
As I can go on this list for a long time, but I'm just going to hit on these main points here, which would be, okay, so you're concentrating on all this digital stuff, right? And the CEO bursts in the door and he's got 3, 4, 5 trade shows he just decided that the sales team is going to go do, and he wants you to lead it up. Your mind's wrapped around digital, right? You're all digital. You can't forget this stuff that falls into the marketing department's realm. You're supposed to design the displays. You're supposed to have the booth strategy, right? The show strategy. How are you going to get leads? What are you going to do with those leads? What kind of follow-up are you going to do with emails, and phone calls? And they're expecting you to kind of somewhat do a sales manager's job in some of that. And I mean, they pile it on. It falls into the marketing bucket every time. So print collateral, merchandise, those types of things. You mentioned direct mail, email, CRMs and automation, right? Don't forget the traditional marketing, radio, TV, satellite, billboards, right? And with the options that you have today, it's crazy that first of all, a CMO would come into a role, or a marketing person in your company, marketing leader comes in, and they have a third of this that they're really experienced and good at. Like, a lot of this is, there's a strategy to make each one of those things work really well. And like you said, it's unique for you, what you do in your company, what you offer, and with your specific clients. And so the marketer is under a lot of stress when you really think about this much that they've got to handle. And, I want the CEO to hear this and be like, wow, there is a lot to consider. There are a lot of options, and that is a lot of stress. Like, they need to understand that piece of it is the hardest piece. And then you are limited by what you can do and the resources and the staff that you have. So staff, time, and money are all restrictions.
Yeah. It always comes down to those things, for sure. Your strategy is built on those, as well as who are your customers, where do they live, what do they do, how do they engage, and then find them in those places, engage with them in those ways, right? That's what your marketing strategy starts with. Problem is you may not be able to afford to be in all those places, or you may not have the bandwidth to be in all those places. So pick and choose the ones that are either most efficient for you because they're easy or they're inexpensive. They don't take a lot of bandwidth, like email. So email's a good, easy one. Or the ones that are most meaningful to you as a value. The ROI is really high on these kinds of things. Do those things. Like, go all out. Um, I say all that, and then as a demand generation, content driven kind of thought, the way I think about things as a marketer, I think a lot of traps that CEOs get into is fast transaction go, right? And events are somewhere on that line, and paid media, maybe depending on the kind of business you have. And I think that's a lot of reason why SEO is always on the very back burner, because it's super technical and complicated. It requires also you have content, and it's a grind. Like we talk about this all the time. It's a grind, and it's
Mhm.
not easy. And therefore people put less value on it. And the truth is, I've seen the needle move on great content and great SEO work. It is a grind. It's 100% a grind. However, if your site went from 20,000 visitors to 50,000 visitors in 12 months, would you be excited about that? Of course you would, right? Like, you're nothing changed about your site other than the number of people that came there.
Right.
You
Right.
that in and of itself would increase the transactions, but that's an investment. That's
Well,
so.
yeah, and every CEO is going to have a different set of
Yeah,
expectations, and so it's good to have that talk with them early on
yeah,
of what's important to you. Because and if you could show them the list, I'm going to put it in the show notes and on our bio. I'll put all that information there, but have a list in front of you. Hey, look, these are all the things that can be done. You have to help me decide, because he needs to be part of that decision, so he understands
sure.
that he needs to really truly understand the time and the restrictions and the staff that it takes to do it. But on that list would be things I haven't mentioned. Marketing plays a very important role in culture, in promoting culture internally, in messaging, communication, videos. They somewhat play a PR for the leadership team and the CEO, outbound and internally, both. They can be in charge of promoting the usage of a software you have internally, and
Absolutely.
that it takes off, right?
Yeah.
Um, consumer programs, employee programs, referral programs, third party partnerships sometimes falls into on their plate.
Yep.
Um, reviews, online reviews, testimonials, capturing those testimonials, promoting those, using them for sales enablement, right? Sponsorships and endorsements. And then the whole category of sales support and sales promotions. That's kind of
Yep.
old school, it sounds like, but that still applies in a lot of industries, that you have a sales promotional calendar.
Yeah. Especially
Um,
B2B. Yeah.
yeah, B2C, the big time, like thinking like car dealerships still do it, right? Like there are a lot of details in the calendar, the full, year calendar of events and items all over the place. Branding and design is like the umbrella thing that falls here. Is you're in charge of branding and design and consumer awareness and top of mind awareness and how do people view you. And wow, I mean, I'm I'm just, this is what we could think of, right? Like
Yeah.
these are just like the pies that you can, create here, that these things fall into. And I think that when you walk away from this, you have to take away from it that the marketing covers so much that you have to be realistic about what you're asking your marketing team to do and what you can accomplish. And you know, I I think that part is what's the biggest difficulty in even hiring a CMO is I need them to have experience, but I don't know what I need yet, because why?
Mhm.
I don't know what my strategy is yet. And I don't know what
Yeah.
I need because I haven't hired that guy who really knows. So like,
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
that's a catch 22, isn't it?
It is. And that's actually, I was thinking about this earlier when you're talking about, like, when you mentioned, like, a lot of CMOs know a third of these, right? And
Mhm.
come in with some kind of like I said, predisposition, but that's exactly right. Like, they have these ideas. They already know in certain things this is what they'd like default to. But you're right. Like, if you're a CMO and you're interviewing for a job, you tend to migrate to people that are interested in doing the things you're interested in. And So naturally, and then also as your CEO, if you're like, hey, I really know paid media is important to me, I'm going to hire somebody who's got a lot of paid media experience. No kidding. That's probably smart. But what it does also do is it might trap you a little bit to where you're both already thinking this is the way, when the truth is there actually might be other ways. But as a company, you've been investing in a certain process, a certain way of doing it for so long. Paid media and paid search are this way. I've been driving transaction with my investment. I've been getting ROI. If somebody tries to come in and tell me that a content strategy will do exactly what a paid media strategy will do, it's just a 12-month grind to get there.
Mhm.
I'm going to be like, it might, but I'm not doing it because I don't have 12 months to
Right.
put into it, and I can't afford to do both at the same time. That shift is very difficult. So if you're a startup, trust me, you don't want to get into paid media if you don't have to, because your cost per acquisition is going to go way up.
Right.
No one knows who you are, so they're not going to convert. So why don't you spend some time telling people who you are? Focus on your message, focus on content, get the word out.
Yeah,
Then,
well,
if you want to do something else, you can.
that's wild that a lot of agencies, the first thing that they go to an agency, the first thing they want to do is do pay search for you. They want to, you say I need leads.
It's easy to build.
They instantly say, well, cough up a budget for paid search. Then like what? It's what they can do fast and repeatedly and with confidence. And so that's what they want to do with your money.
Yeah.
And it is not always the right route.
I told somebody this last week, actually, I was like, we're brand new. We have no business doing paid search. However, if we're going to do paid search, which is not a bad idea, we're going to focus on one keyword. And that keyword is going to be so specific to what I think somebody who is in the process of evaluation, where we can influence them, then that might be okay. But only if we have all this content behind us that we can put in front of those kinds of people, and not just look at it as a transaction, book a meeting, but actually be like, let's just drive content to them, because they're clearly looking for something. The intent is there. Well, like even that could be a trap, because then all of a sudden you're like, oh man, that worked really, really well. We got one customer and that customer was worth this giant sum of money. Let's keep doing that. Well, whoa, hold on. Like, because you don't want to buy all the terms. There could be 10,000 terms out there. And you're like, I'm not going to buy all these, or buy every magazine that hits this target, or buy every show that's out there, or every podcast. You're like, you can't just buy the space. There are people that are bigger than you. There are always people bigger than you. Like, it's just the way it is. And if they want to buy the space, they will, So it comes back to strategy and the same things we talk about all the time. Money, bandwidth, and time.
I was thinking about all these different options, and it's almost like you have to figure out what the what the equation is. You have to unlock the safe. You have to come up with the combination, right? The right combination of like 7 to 10 digits, right? You got to come up with the right one, and it's really difficult, right? You used your experience to guide you. But even then you're testing and honing in and improving. And that's why I do believe if you've got a proven, competent CMO, giving him time to work that equation out and dial it in to where it's really effective is important. And that time can take, you and I've talked about this in other episodes. It can take a minimum 12. It could take 18. It could take 2 years to get it really honed in and more. So the important part, I think, is that you're always improving. You're always learning and always improving. That's the part you want out of a CMO and out of any of your leaders, really. You want them to be students to their area, their expertise, and you want them to always be in that mode to learn.
I think if you for me in this conversation, we talk a lot about marketing, and we've both been a CMO, and I'm a huge advocate for marketing, obviously, but this show is about CEOs. This is a show about business owners. This is a show about finding your way to grow. If all you hear from us is force yourself and your marketers to evaluate, measure the things they can measure, evaluate the process, evaluate the outcome, and talk to customers. And if they can do that every 6 months and just constantly be talking to customers in that way and figuring out what's working, what's not working, in that 2-year period, you'll improve so much.
Mm.
And that's the difference. The honest truth is,
True.
you want your marketing leader to stick around. This is how you do it. It's force them to tell you, what do customers think? Because one, it forces them to have those conversations, and two, it gives you an opportunity to hear it from that perspective. Because if you don't, you're going to constantly believe your way that you want to do it is the way, and they're going to constantly believe that the way they want to do it is the way. That might match up, may not, but either way, at some point, a couple of years in, you're going to measure it and say it is or it isn't.
Yeah.
And as long as the customer says they like where this is going, or where they'd like you to see you, or they're, the customer's here, but you're here, or whatever, like they're on TikTok and you're on Instagram and you guys don't talk to each other. Well, figure that out, like that's exactly my point. And if you can do that well, your marketer will be there for a long time. And the longer they're there, frankly, the better off you are, because you do not have to recreate the wheel every 2 years and blow everything up and start all over again, because it's all giant pain in the ass, and you're better off not doing it. You're better off succeeding.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And rather than blowing it up every 2 years.
And that's great advice, great tips. And what I hear, like the theme I kind of hear from that is keep your expectations in check, and have patience. You can hire the wrong marketing person, and you need to get rid of them. That does happen. But I do see a lot of times it's more of they didn't have the time in the room to get things shaken down, and ironed out. I want to go back and refer to episode 1, where we talked about hiring an agency and CMO or CMO, or a combination of. And I think we even said in most cases today, it's a combination of, where when you decide out of all these many things that we can do for marketing, we're going to narrow it down to these, like 12 to 15, whatever.
Yep.
Here's the things that I have expertise as a CMO, or that we have marketing people internally that can handle this piece. Here's the things that we don't really have expertise in, or that we don't have time and capacity to do.
Yeah.
Those are the things that you look for an agency to do. So that goes back to that thing I was talking about, where figure out what it is that you need done. Go find an agency or person that outside the company that can do that thing to help you with. And that's usually the right answer for everybody being happy and not overworked and results.
100%. And it's easy if you said, let's think about the 3 pillars where agencies can really layer in for you because of their own expertise and their ability to move. So first off, you only hire agencies for 2 things. 1, they have expertise you don't have. And 2, they can move faster than you. That's it, right? Because if you had money and you could hire somebody, it'd be too slow, right? Those are the reasons why. They're perfectly good reasons. So media, right? You want to buy a lot of stuff and scale, hire an agency. They have more relationships, they can get faster, they can get better deals than you'll ever get by yourself. So even if you're in a niche, a really niche where there's 3 publications and no TV, still have them do it. Doesn't mean you shouldn't have relationships with those publications, because that's different. That's PR. 2, branding, design, right? Like if you're looking for creative, especially if you're looking for content, video, it can be expensive, but those people can move a lot faster than you can. There's just expertise there that you'll just you may never want to have on staff unless you're a big organization. And then 3
quality's going to be high there on the design side. I have seen you hire the right design agency, and it's worth every penny.
Yeah, absolutely. They'll help you define your brand in a lot of ways. Right. Mm-hmm. And then the third is I hate to say it like this, but SEO. It's incredibly technical thing. And you may not have enough people, frankly, to get all of it done if you have a lot of content and a lot of site stuff, especially if you have never focused on it before. There's just a lot of heavy lifting to do there. It's very technical. It's hard to stay up to date with all the things going on there, and an agency would be dedicated to that. So for me, as a CMO, those are the areas where I would look to outsource myself. I've done paid search for sure before. Same as kind of like with SEO. It's a little easier to get up to date, but everybody's got their own methodology on how to do paid search. But I think if it was me, I was like, hey, I want to move. What do I want to control? There's one of those three will be the things I say I want to outsource and manage and not necessarily own on the day to day. I can do social, I can do email. Those are not hard. You can get people in that have the expertise. They're affordable. Reputation management, same way. I kind of bundled those three together for myself, like when I was running, a business. And technology's a partnership probably with internal piece, but in any case, the point's the same, right? Like it's a mixture of things. Don't be afraid to mix it up. But if you and your CMO are partnered in this and force yourselves to rethink about your strategy from the customer's perspective frequently, man, that relationship will get better over time, because then you're in agreement. You're like, what? Even if you don't agree on the tactic, you agree. We think we know what the customer wants. There's gonna be a lot of customers at these events this year because they've been cooped up for 2 years and now they want to go to Vegas. Whatever. Yeah. Right? I mean, that I would say for 22, that's probably right. Like, there's still a lot of people that don't, they don't want to deal with COVID. But there's a lot of people that are like, I'm going to Vegas for the week-long convention. They're going to be there. They want to party, sure, they want to get out, but they also want to see all the people they have relationships with, especially if it's like a B2B, like an association or something like that. They know all those people. They just want to see people.
Yeah. So everybody's wanting to be social right now. It's like because they're tired of it, right? They're ready to have conversations again and get out in public.
Ready. Yeah.
I got a guy today, actually, he was saying, like, I don't want a Zoom meeting anymore. We're actually meeting, we're meeting in person. I'm like, wow, that's a lashback there on how we do things. I thought we were all going to go to Zoom from here on out. But I think some people are really, they're done with it. But so the things that we think are important, on this topic and coming out of today would be, there's a lot of options for marketers. Narrowing it down is very tough. It's a very difficult job. And so with all those options, every situation is unique. Your company's unique, right? Your customers, your products, your services, and all those things are unique. And then finding a CMO that has the experience in the areas that you want, all these things together are part of the combination that you look at to make a successful marketing machine in your company. So that CMO's role is really important to be able to sort through all those options and help you pick the right ones.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
And basically you're restricted in all of this. You're restricted. We said it before already: time, budget, and staff. And so you've got to be realistic in what that looks like. And CMO, you need to lay it out. Marketing people, you need to lay out the times it takes to do things the right way, because in digital marketing and with Google and things like that, the faster you move, sometimes the worse the results. So, you need to be realistic about those expectations. Yeah. And then the last point I think we wanted to make today, which, Trice, you're huge on this piece of it. You and I totally agree, is at the end of the day, with all these options, what makes or breaks a CMO and a marketing program is the strategy. Is you have to figure out what dots to connect out of all these options to fit within your budget. And that strategy can't include everything. It's got to, because then everything you can't accomplish everything. You have to narrow down to what you can accomplish and try to meet the company's current goals and initiatives and, the rocks and the things they're trying to do every quarter and for the annual goals, you have to try to meet those within your budget and do all these other things that are the right things to do, like, SEO, and like, maybe just, releasing videos, and social media posts, those things that, you have to do. You've got to fit it all in there, and it's a puzzle.
Yeah. What I like about this is when you and I go in to talk to people, everyone wants to start at either an executable where they know they have to do something and they're all hot about it, or the strategy because they're not sure of, or they don't have a really well-defined strategy. That's where usually people come in at. And you and I try to bring them back a little bit, actually, because most cases we find they need to go through some other things first to really define who they are and understand their customers and understand themselves before they decide what their strategy is. But that being said, there are people who do have a really good grasp of who they are and who their customers are. And those people are probably looking to people like us as fractionals or as consultants and coaches and saying, I need you to help me find the right kind of person, and not necessarily define the strategy for me right now. I think that's something we both love to do, frankly, because we love talking to other people and helping make great matches, and say, like, this person's a great full-time person or a great fractional for you, and here's why. Because they match up with what what you already believe your industry needs from a marketing perspective, requires, what your business needs and requires, and also they're going to help you develop a strategy. And we're not going to do that for you. We're going to find you the right people to do it. For us, that's just as valuable as doing the strategy, because we both are like, if I'm not going to do it myself, this isn't going to be me as a fractional doing it for you and, having some relationship. What I want to make sure is we find somebody that's perfect for you that can do it as well. And frankly, it's the same kind of experience from the reward of it is we found somebody really, really freaking brilliant, and we think you're going to love them as much as we do, frankly. So,
yeah.
Yeah.
And it's always easier to find a company that's done marketing before or have had any marketing roles before. It's easier to find a good CMO match or a good marketing leadership role.
Yeah.
Good to find a person that matches those things, because you have an idea of roughly what you need. It's harder when you have a company who's just starting out and they've never had marketing strategy. They've never done marketing campaigns. Kind of like what I was describing, where they just do social media, SEO, and paid search, or a combination of those things. They really don't know what they need. And I know right now, like, that's one of the scenarios I'm working with, is I'm helping them with some light marketing strategy just to discover what we think that they need internally. And then we can go fill those buckets, and we know what to tell the agency that they've hired. Here's the pieces that we know that you can do out of the strategy we've identified. We're hiring an internal person who's going to handle these programs and these things internally. So, that's really what we came on to do today, was to really just give everybody a scope, an idea of all of these options out there, and kind of convey, like, the strategy is the hardest part that you have to do first. And if you do that piece of it, you won't blow your budget. You will get results.
Yes, you'll feel much more efficient about the way you approach your marketing, because you won't just be, all over the place shooting guns and not aiming at anything, because you don't have a plan. And so in the future, what we're going to talk through is, how do you build a plan, right? It's hard. And especially with all this stuff out there, the landscape is crazy. There's a million things in marketing going on. How do you go through the process as a CMO and a CEO of deciding what's going to be best for you and in your organization? So it's a good tee up for the next time we talk about these kinds of things. Here in next week, few weeks, whatever that might be. But it's the outcome of this conversation is, okay, what's the plan? How do we build one?
Yeah.
and not
I would-
necessarily what are all the things. It's really, how do I get to figuring out what the things need to be?
Yeah. And when you say that, we're not talking about a budget per se. We're not talking about a content plan. We're not talking about an SEO plan. Those are all individual things that you can do.
Yep.
We're talking about a marketing strategy and plan
Yeah.
that you can take to the leadership team, like something that you can take to the business owner and say, hey, this is the plan and this is what I want to do this year. And this is the budget that I need for it. And we're going to do these things really well, repeatedly all year long. And we're going to commit to them, you know?
Yep.
So
Yeah.
how you
Just
arrive
the-
at that is not
Yeah.
easy.
Nope.
Right.
Yep. That's exactly right. That's right.
Cool. Well,
All right. Good one today.
good. Well, make comments in the below. Make comments and tell us what you think of the show, and give us ideas for future shows. If you have any questions, and share, like, and join us next episode. And we'll see you.
Yeah. Take care, everybody.